Hey, you look like you have a big brain. Can you tell me what Steve Bell's talking about here?
Buy to build to buy, which will be there's a company out there, something like, I don't know, let's say XCath, right? And
Okay.
they're really making progress. And G has just seen that Stryker and Siemens have got together to do their neuro robot that they're going to do. And
Yep.
they think, oh God, we need something, and we don't have a robot. And Siemens bought Corindus back in the day. What do we do? What do we do? So what they could do is go and actually almost buy something like an XCath, take majority ownership, fund them to the hilt, buy them in as an asset, but keep them spun out,
Okay.
and then build to buy as if they were a build to buy.
Okay. So, friend, it's okay if you don't understand what Steve's talking about. It's okay if you don't understand every single med tech company he rattled off like nothing, because this is an episode of Second Sips in which we go a bit deeper. I also have my lovely tablet over here so that we can break things down. I can sketch all kinds of robots and ideas, which will be fun. And throughout this edit, I have placed these lovely markers of key points during our discussion, which was about an hour and 15 minutes, where Steve went so deep and I had lingering thoughts and wanted to draw things up or pull up images or videos to just help you have full context around the surgical robotics build to buy ecosystem. And a build to buy, just to quickly define it, is when a large strategic company like a Johnson and Johnson will set aside money to start a startup that will try to develop a new technology. And if that technology is successful, then that company has prioritization or priority bids to be able to buy that company back in and scale it commercial. And that's what we talked about because there's many different build to buys in surgical robotics. So this all starts with a promise I made for you. So let's hop into that and then we'll go into the markers. Well, and my plan, because I forgot to mention this, like I will make this conversation accessible after the fact. So I do a breakdown with like sketching and I pull up pictures and go through architecture. So we'll speak at this level and then we'll contextualize it in second sips, which is fine. For me, it's really exciting actually to hear some of these little pieces of history I didn't have because when I started in Ethicon, I worked first on our handheld business and ultrasonic technology. That's what I wanted to talk about first. What is ultrasonic technology? So let's hop into this and then we'll start running through these. Also, for a little bit of context, I've been awake for about 13 hours straight. I woke up at 11:50 in the evening because I do third shift at Amazon while doing entrepreneurship in parallel. So my brain might be a little bit fuzzy during today's discussion. My son Akio is taking a nap upstairs. My kids get off the bus in 45 minutes. So we got a really beautiful window to geek out together and it should be a lot of fun. So, what is ultrasonic technology? So, let me draw one of my favorite drawings ever. Oh, shoot, this is the busted pen. My son bit the eraser off of this, which I love my son so much. So, ultrasonic technology leverages something known as like resonant waves. So, you can think about a guitar string, which I have guitar over to the side. When you pluck a guitar string, it vibrates at a distinct sound wave called resonance, and that's what causes it to sing or sound beautiful. In the simplest fashion, if I draw a string right here and I pluck it, it will create a wave that will propagate to the end of the string. And then if it's at resonance, it'll bounce back perfectly. This is kind of this like special phenomenon. But if I vibrate it at twice the frequency, you'll get something like this. This is the second fundamental frequency. And let's say I vibrate it at the fourth fundamental frequency. This is like my favorite science in the world. I've spent so many years working on this. So, this is how guitar strings work and create different notes in its simplicity. But imagine for a second if you had this lovely magic disc called a piezoelectronic disc. And it's kind of like a magnet. It has locked polarity. So there's a plus and a minus side, minus, 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 plus, plus, plus. Someone who's trained in the art would be able to understand this. If you look through patterns and things, this is all clear. So I'm not giving away anything too special. Well, we basically have this device. Then you have a very long titanium blade. For Ethicon, it's a terrible drawing. It's between 23, 36, and I forgot if we had a longer length. But basically, you can cause these discs to pulse if you run electricity through them. So if you put a minus charge on this pad, it'll kind of repel against the discs. If you put a plus charge, it'll pull them in. So you can pulse them. They change properties mechanically based on the electricity that goes through it. And if you pulse it really fast, say at like 50,000 cycles per second kilohertz, then you can create a standing wave down this blade. And there's a lot of magic that goes into balancing these blades. But the beautiful aspect of, oh, I messed that up, is that it creates this vibration. It moves incredibly fast when you bring in contact with tissue. The friction from, there'll be like a little clamp arm over here of closing the tissue between the clamp arm and the blade will create immense amounts of friction. Friction creates heat. The water evaporates. The proteins cross-link and get sticky. It allows you to cut and seal at the same time. So if we want to look at one of these devices, and there's many of them, let's go to wide shot for a second. And by the way, I have buttons to flip between screens. I am not perfect at it, so there will be moments when I likely screw up. Let's hop over to Ethicon Harmonic, and then we'll get into robotics. But I just wanted to give you context into like my world. So this is a product I had proximity to. So there's a transducer hidden in there. This connects to a generator, vibrating titanium blade down the middle of this device. And then at the end, you have this beautiful little tapered jaw here, and that's how you cut. And it's like a surgeon's knife. It's the best thing ever. I've seen these used in Japan. It's super humbling and beautiful. All right, so that's harmonic. Let's hop into some more bullet points, get into the meat of this conversation. Let's just find the first one, see what it is. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And sometimes these are shifted slightly. The great opportunities for me. And I've learned so much through your content, through your digital course, through the way you carry yourself as an innovator and your compassion and care for the patients that we all serve, as well as just your tenacity with which you continue to progress new innovation, even when you are in a season where you don't necessarily have to. I love the smile from Steve. So, what did I want to say about this? If you haven't connected with Steve Bell, if you've lived under a rock in medtech, that's what I want to do. I would first thing is like go to LinkedIn, just search Steve Bell, follow him, connect with him. He also has a how to start up a medtech website. So this is like a shameless plug. He has a digital course in here. I actually have a testimonial on this page of like how much his digital course has helped me with how to start up in medtech. He's got 100 beautiful modules on how to start a business that advances global healing. And I would type it up on the screen, but I'll just write it really quick. If you want to take Steve's beautiful course, he has a special agreement with the Big Brain Club and me, Sunday Sips discount. I don't know why I wrote that. Let's do promo. There's a special promo code for you. What is it? Third shift brain. Big. It's all caps, one word. Brain 30. If you type in Big Brain 30, you'll get 30% off this course. It has changed my life. It's shown me so many beautiful gaps I've had in my understanding of how to actually start up in medtech. Steve is a wizard. He was the chief commercial officer of CMR Surgical, which is Europe's largest unicorn robotics company. I have a video that will show that. We'll get to that in a minute, but it's really cool. So that was what I wanted to say about Steve. He's the guest on this podcast. He's a legend. Let's keep rolling.
You know, I support people who
We don't need to see that one. I'm remembering some of these. Let's try this.
discipline. So their motives were, how do we as rapidly as possible do something? And Medtronics was not an internal development. It was
Okay.
actually, so they went to Germany, they went to DLR, which was part of the aerospace robotics, and they did a deal with DLR there for a system, which again was a bed mounted system. You can go and see the
That's
old
it.
DLR. Yeah, you can go and see the old.
Okay. So what we're talking about here is how different companies got into the surgical robotics space. Medtronic has a wide range of minimally invasive surgical technologies for both open and laparoscopic, where you go through small ports in your stomach, and they wanted to move into robotics. I had a misunderstanding that they had just started this company internally. Steve was helping me understand they worked with an external company to start their robotic system called Hugo. So I wanted to show you Hugo. So let's go and check it out. This is going to be what's called a cart-based architecture. Let's refresh this page. So they're kind of like the second large player entering the space. Okay, friends, I just navigated a terrible personal tragedy. I monologued for about 40 minutes with animations, with my sketch pad, and different videos of surgical robotics, and my computer ran out of space and only recorded 10 minutes, and I'm devastated. So we're going to do it all again because this is a conversation worth having. That said, I am surrounded by 4 children. So I'm going to record for a bit, and this is probably going to get broken up over multiple days because I got a few more days of third shift and we're relocating soon. So let's hop into Hugo and see how far we can get. I know we're just about to share a cool little video of that. So let me see if I can pull it up. And let's play it again. So the Hugo architecture has multiple robotic carts. So these carts are set up right here. And then you have these Hugo arms. You have a tool driver that connects a tool to it that can then insert through these trocars into the patient's body. You have 4 arms in this system. And it also has an open console. So the surgeon is not immersed in a closed console like Intuitive. They can actually see the whole OR film or OR flow. Now, I was able to experience Hugo myself in Japan, which is really neat. I didn't get to drive it, but I got to see it and touch it and kind of look at the tool drivers. It was really interesting to me. Um, and let's see if we could just play it a little bit more so it gets closer. Perfect. So this tool driver, basically you have an instrument here, and then you got multiple motor stacks in here that can move different mechanisms. And then this will move in and or up and down along this rail to drive the tool into the patient's body, which is called insertion. And then you have this nice little scissor arm. So the whole goal or aspiration of Hugo was to be able to have a reduced OR footprint compared to Intuitive's boom architecture, where the robotic arm is above you and comes down. That said, it's debatable how much this actually helps. And when we get to CMR, we'll see a company that I believe does it a bit better. So let's keep moving with the edit. Hey, Pretentious Engineer here. I know you didn't ask, but this episode of Sunday Sips is caffeinated by Kinetic Vision. Throughout my decade long career in surgical robotics, I've worked with many medtech consultants, and without question, Kinetic Vision stands in a league of their own. They masterfully curate the art of science, accelerating innovation through advanced technology. Their capabilities, creativity, and candor have consistently made them my most trusted digital external innovation partner. We've collaborated across continents and time zones, tackling challenges and unconventional ideas and taking them from white paper to fully functional MVPs. Their contributions, from early concept generation to usability studies, test automations, digital twin creation, VR simulations, and beyond, have been pivotal in moving breakthrough ideas towards real world clinical use. My partnership with Kinetic Vision has been a decade in the making, and it's an honor to introduce you to their world class capabilities. If you're facing technical challenges beyond what you can do in house, I trust Kinetic Vision to help you find the path forward and empower you to innovate on behalf of global patients and the clinicians you serve. Finding the right partner to drive digital transformation within your organization and product pipeline is critical to the long term success of a medtech business. So, check out the link in the description below to take the Digital External Innovation Readiness Assessment, which includes a waitlist for experiencing a discovery session with Kinetic Vision. It'll take you less time than it takes to finish your coffee or tea, and it'll provide you with greater clarity on if Kinetic Vision is right for you. Anyways, you could sip on that, and let's get back to Sunday Sips, and we'll go from there. All right.
And J&J, you know the story better than me. You know, they did sort of a seeded build to buy where they decided to put Verb together with Google. So they thought, you know, great, all the software guys with all some of these new advanced robotics guys. And then they decided they needed Auris on top of it, merge the whole thing together. And that was kind of been a little bit of a messy merge. And there's lots of documents out there. And even on my site, again, you can read.
Good.
But then
Okay, so I'm gonna draw a really fun sketch. Let me see if I can pull this back up. And naturally, my tablet has disconnected, so give me 1 second to get this hooked up, assuming it will be kind. You want to see all the notes I took that you didn't get to see? Maybe we could just run my notes, which would be fun. 1 second. Sometimes I have to open and close this application, and then it's normally good. When I saw that the recording died, I was so sad. It's like every content creator's worst nightmare to just have something bomb out like that. But it's normal. This stuff happens. I'm just glad I haven't lost like a full podcast or anything. That would be absolutely dreadful. All right, here we go. So let's see if we can just scroll back through the notes. Pull this to the side, put my fancy view on. And again, we'll get as far as we can. Oh, cool. I did draw it. All right. So intuitive, you have this boom architecture that's coming down. Medtronic has Hugo Ras with a cart architecture. Then when we get into J&J, it's like J&J plus Verb plus Oris. These are two acquisitions that have occurred. But before this one, so we'll set that to the side, we had this agreement between Google. This is supposed to be handshaking. Google owned a company called Verily Life Sciences, and Verily shook hands with Ethicon, which is an extension of Johnson & Johnson, where I worked, to create this company called Verb Surgical. Verb had this fun little like logo that apparently looked like somebody running. Let me see if I can find it really quick. I had pulled up. Let's do this view. There we go. So this is the beautiful, expensive, complicated diagram of Google shaking hands with Verily and Ethicon. And this is what led to a build to buy. He's grumpy, but okay. Maybe. Come on, Akio, come here. Come here. You want more? I'm gonna see if Cheetos hold him. But if we look at the Verb logo, this is actually supposed to be like similar colors to Google, right? Plays with the green and the blue and the red. The purple's a different touch to vary it. I think that's from Verily Life Sciences. And then this is supposed to look like a healthy guy running, was what the original logo came from. So it's just a little bit of fun backstory for you. If we go back to our tablet, Akio, come here. Come here. Don't just sit there and be sad. Come here and change it. I don't know if he's going to come. So there's a lot of benefits of doing a build to buy. Come on. We'll see. I'm going to be a dad, and I'm going to give this another shot at recording. When I give it another shot, I'll keep all my tabs open, and we will go into Oris, Verb, and this whole ecosystem of J&J, because there's too much sad going on right now. But appreciate you, friends, and we'll keep going in a minute. Check 1, 2. Hey. Check 1, 2. Okay, it's Joe from farther in the future. So let's jump back into this build to buy. It's a new day. So there's a lot of benefits to doing a build to buy from a balance sheet perspective. And by no means am I a financial analyst, but I've been proximal enough to business finances to like kind of get it. So because Johnson & Johnson is a publicly traded company, every year you can look at your balance sheet with a P&L or profits and loss and figure out how much revenue the business is making because it's a publicly traded company. And each quarter you can see also what are the R&D expenses. Now you want to be demonstrating to the market that you're investing in R&D, but there's also headcount and general operation costs under that. And sometimes if you see that continuing to increase, it's not the best indication. So what you can do is if you do a super acquisition where you have a company that's already made it through an FDA submission and they're ready to commercialize, then you don't have to have a large R&D headcount to build that technology in-house. You could just acquire it when it's ready, move the cash over, and then use your commercial team to push an existing product and leave the R&D under that opco, even though it all gets wrapped. I do not have one of those Akari. I'm sorry. I don't know what Akari's asking for. She's playing Minecraft. But with a build to buy, it's very similar because you can basically spread the cash over to this asset, Verb Surgical, and you don't have to give it all the cash right away, and it doesn't really sit on your balance sheet because you don't have, technically you shouldn't have headcount supporting it. Now with J&J, there was tons of engineers in Ethicon, more and more every year, that had to support this acquisition, but there's initially balance sheet efficiencies from it. So it looks I wrote looks good on a balance sheet, kind of, because the reality is this has been a bleeding, I was going to say a bleeding goat is not an expression that's normal, but that's kind of how it feels because we test on goats sometimes. It has been hemorrhaging cash like crazy with no ROI. And as different leaders come in and out, they keep progressing the platform, but it's been 10 years and we haven't seen a return on that investment. So the way this works from a P&L perspective, at like stage 0, you basically are going to seed some money. So J&J put money in, Google put money in, they co-ventured this Verb company to get it moving. And then each milestone that gets hit, you give it more money and more money and more money. And then you have prioritization of acquisition. So there's typically a pre-agreed upon amount, not always. And in this case, Johnson & Johnson through Ethicon eventually acquired Verb Surgical from Google. They gave Google cash today for the joint venture. Thank you, Google. And then we took the company, also acquired Oris, and brought that all under one umbrella to create the Otava robot. And let's check out what Otava looks like. I have some really cool pictures that are going to be absolutely amazing. So let me find my nice view. Here we go. Get ready for the grand reveal of this proprietary Otava system. Also, we didn't touch on intuitive, so I'll show that really quick. Traditional boom architecture. This is the newest DaVinci 5. One of the cool things they push towards, and then we'll get to Otava, is they have this new haptics, which a lot of folks have been really interested in. So you can feel at your user interface how much force you're pushing in or how you're grasping force. So giving that feedback, and they're showing clinically that clinicians in what is it, they like deliver a certain percentage less force into the tissue, which is safer for patients. So and it just creates a different level of immersion. That's wonderful, Kari. Kari, my daughter, said she can't see or hear what's going on with the interview, but she likes what's going on. So that's fantastic. Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful, little miss. I'm gonna keep going. You just enjoy your Minecraft. So this is the lovely Otava system. Let's refresh it so you get this beautiful animation to see our robotic system. Here it is. So cheeky. The next surgery. Where's the robot? That's the whole value prop. So we talk a lot about table mounted systems in this conversation with Steve. There is some kind of robotic architecture hidden beneath. Steve Bell's done some great reviews on J&J patterns. I won't disclose how the system works, how it looks. I will tell you I've worked on it and it's cool and I'm excited about it, but I can't share it because I'll get in trouble. And we don't need that in our life. You can also hear some surgeons' perspectives on the platform that have seen it. And then they're going to reveal some other really epic pictures. Here it comes. You ready? It's plastic stuff, and they have blue light pipes, just like CMR. So snarky, and a thing you could see through, and another piece of plastic. So as you can tell, J&J is really revealing a lot about this platform. So they're kind of cheeky. But let's keep moving forward with the edit. There's a lot more to cover. All right. So that was Verb. We're going to run through all the robotic architectures first, and then we'll get into some more focused questions to reveal.
If you take somebody like CMR Surgical, you basically had a group of people out the UK, the founders out the UK, and it was heavily influenced by somebody like Mark Slack as well. But there was Keith, there was Paul Roberts, and there was Luke, and there was Martin. And what they were more concerned about was that they couldn't understand why robotics wasn't getting more adoption in places like the UK. So they came at it from a completely different angle. And everyone thinks it's a Cambridge University spin out. It's not. It's got nothing to do with Cambridge University. Though those guys all work for different Cambridge consultants like Sagentia, or I think one of them worked for maybe Cambridge Consultant.
So first of all, Steve's got like 30 plus years of experience in these spaces. I don't know all the names he rattled off. He knows a lot of people. It's probably worth LinkedIn hunting, honestly, if you want to go really deep. I just haven't had the bandwidth to do so. But let's look at CMR. I had the opportunity to drive the CMR system hands on. It was incredible. So I'm going to show a video that's their CMR promo, and then I took another video that I'll talk through. But to use it firsthand was really compelling because I feel like CMR delivers on what Hugo intended to do with the cart-based architecture. That said, Hugo will have Ligasure, has Ligasure, and probably other products from Medtronic's portfolio eventually, like stapling. Whereas CMR has some different architecture challenges and blessings that we'll go through. So first, I'll play this video while I pull up another video, and then we'll talk through the video. So let's jump into that. All right, let me find my other video in the background. Give me a second to pull this up while you look at something epic. Imagine this really inspiring music, like really cool music. It should feel epic. So you have 3D glasses. It's an open console. Where is it? All right, I found it. Okay, so one of the things that's really remarkable about this platform is they put a function that historically has gone inside the tools. The tool is the disposable component that pops on and off the robot. It can still be used multiple uses. I don't know how many CMR indicates for. It depends on the tool typically. But they put insertion on the ARM architecture, which is kind of cool. Oh, actually Intuitive does it as well. Maybe this isn't as novel as I thought. But basically the ARM is the source of insertion. So what I mean by that is if you look at Intuitive, you have this tool driver that translates up and down this rail. So you have kind of this Z rail. Instruments on here would go through that trocar holder into the patient. And this is a large piece of mass that has to translate. And this is why having it come down is a little bit more beneficial than, say, an Ottava system that has an inverted pendulum, which has challenges associated with it. What CMR's done, which I adore, is the arm has a shoulder, elbow, wrist kind of joint system. So the whole arm just drives and pushes the tool in. And then your motor stack goes into the tool. Although I didn't have enough time to play with it. It felt more like it was pushers and pullers. I have so much curiosity. I wish I could get one of these two instruments and just tear it apart and like film a breakdown, because that's what engineers do. We break each other's stuff because we love each other's work so much that we have to understand it from the inside. Um, Other cool thing, this clinicians interacting with the arm, I was able to control the CMR robot and they could just move the arms with their hands, but it would still know where it was in space and continue to be controllable. So this is great because typically you don't have the robotic surgeon just sitting in the console and there's nothing else around the robot. You'll typically have some kind of nurse, or in Japan, sometimes a second surgeon at the patient bedside, interacting, exchanging instruments, clips for clip appliers, things like that. So what's cool with this is that you can get your trocars really close because the table mounted architecture is, or not table, the cart based architecture allows you to have like the ability to put them really close together and then have close trocars. And if there's collisions, it can just kind of move across from each other. But yeah, so this, if you look at this guy's waist, nice waist, it is the same dimension. And because the architecture is different, it's not as high of a risk of falling over. So if you look at the Hugo, oh shoot, we got to replay this video. Oh, dramatic music. I think I forgot to show you Hugo in motion. Let's see. Oh no, I showed you in the last video. I wish I could fast forward this thing, but basically, we're gonna sketch up the Z rail once I get it all laid out. Show me the full system. We'll get a good view of it. That'll work. So you see how this base is a little bit bigger, wider. There's weight in here because this arm is heavy and has all these different joints. I still don't fully understand why Hugo's arm has so many joints to get to the patient from here. I don't know why we need all of these degrees of freedom, particularly this to this to this. I don't understand why. But from a physics perspective, a very simple physics perspective, it creates an interesting situation. I think I drew a picture of it earlier. Let me see. Here's your fancy view. Yes, physics. Okay, we're going to redraw this really quick because it's a fun exploration. This is part of the 40 minutes I recorded that went away. Okay, so one of the challenges you have in these spaces i- is if you have this cart right there, got a wheel, and you have this scissor thing, and then you got like a double Z crisscross action going on. Then you got a big, heavy tool driver, an instrument that's plunging into the patient. All the way out here again. This span is huge. So if we pretend this doesn't exist, right? If I cross that out for a second, 1 sec. Fire is Fire. This cart right here would have a center of gravity right here, mg. We'll say mg1. And then you could approximate in this given pose that this would have some center of mass, we'll say right down here, mg, m2g. And then if we look at this location right here, call this x, and from here to this location, call this y, you can calculate the moment about this point. And let's pretend they're equal for a second. So you could say this is statics, m1g equals, or m1g times x is going to equal y times m. This is over approximation 2. So in the event that this term over here becomes greater than this term over here, this system will just it'll tip over because this is putting a moment. Now, in physics, all the engineers are always like doing right hand rule. So you'd create a moment that would just tip it about this point right here. So because of this, you either need a wider cart base or this just needs to be really flipping heavy. Now, the claim of CMR is that because of their architecture where it has the shoulder, elbow, and wrist, and it plunges into the patient, you got rid of this whole Z rail because you put this into the arm. So they pulled weight out and put it in the arm. They also pulled it out of the tool, which is pretty cool. So the tool is very lightweight. Like picking it up is shocking how light some of these tools feel. And the span, this Y value, is shorter on CMR. So because of this, you can have a much tighter footprint. If we look back at CMR's architecture, right here. That's why this is so small. Now it's probably got a nice weight, really low, close to the ground, just like a Tesla vehicle doesn't flip over as easily because the battery pack puts all the weight at the very bottom of the car. Um, so anyway, this is very exciting. But my wife just got home, so I'm going to pause and then we will go deeper in a minute. Okay, cool. So that's CMR. Let's jump into the next one.
because of that genesis. And then you got Hinatori that
Mhm.
decided there. You got the Chinese robots that are just really trying to make a Chinese version of the Da Vinci's.
All right, so I have both of those. Let's pull those up. So first one, Metacoroid. This is the Hinatori robot, and then this is from Japan, built by Kawasaki. I think I have a cool little video of it. We can check it out. So this will have similar architecture to Da Vinci, where you have four-arm boom-mounted robot. Um, again, this robot was developed by Kawasaki. You have another rail system as well for your insertion access. You get your laparoscope. They're gonna have 4K. The viewer is a little bit wider. It's a Sony viewer, which is kind of neat. And some of the feedback from Steve Bell on this platform was that it feels a little bit over-engineered. So some of the workflows a bit complicated for clinicians to navigate. But overall, like a solid, we would say like Me Too product to compete with Da Vinci by Japan for Japan most likely with high precision robotics. Oh, those are foot pedals. One of the weirdest things about the CMR system that I forgot about, and I'll pull up a video I have, I'll do that right now actually, is there's no foot pedals. You control all activations with your thumbs, which is very strange because for Intuitive, typically you will pinch with your fingers, just like this. I'll make myself bigger so you can really feel it. Like you pinch with the grip. It's almost more like an Oculus handle where your thumbs could be anywhere interacting with buttons and you only close with your pointer fingers. It was, I mean, I'm sure you'd get used to it. For me, not being a clinician, it felt very unnatural to just do closure with my pointer fingers because I can activate and change different instruments with my thumbs. Whereas the Da Vinci and the Metacroid, you change or toggle between different arm control, different energy activations with foot pedals. There are different risks with foot pedals of like inadvertently clicking on something you don't mean to, and you have to give indications to the user around that. So I can see kind of the idea of putting it into the controller, just like a PlayStation, but it is interesting. Oh, let's watch this video. My brain's a little scattered because I've made this video for multiple days. So it's right here, I think. So this was at a surgical congress. So what I'm actually showing here is if I pause, whoops, go back. So they gave me a 3D visor. So this looks really crisp because I'm wearing like my camera has the 3D glasses in front of it so that it looks really clear with good depth. You can see it, and then I pull it off to go and look at the robot itself. But it is so small. And you could cart this on an elevator between different rooms. So really enjoyed connecting with the CMR team in person. It's such a pleasant surprise. And there's the goggles again. Oh, it's so fun. But yeah, no pedals. Oh, so you can see. Shoot. Let me see if I can get a good view of it. So you'll have multiple thumb buttons, and then the pointer finger is what's controlling closure if you watch for it. It's definitely hard to see. All right, let's keep rolling. Let's see what's next in this ad. Oh, okay, so that's Metacroid, a Unitoli robot. And then you have the Tumai robot over here. So this is by Medbot. So this is coming out of Shanghai. Um, and then this is an endoscopic robot with multiple arms. This is on its ninth generation in 10 years. So the speed of iteration of this company is wild. And they can also do 5G telesurgeries across, I think it's 12,000 kilometers, something outrageous. So this is the market. This is how they're trying to segment the market from Intuitive. It's just going after telesurgery in a big way. And it seems to be quite effective to help with like hospital overcrowding and being able to bring the best tier surgeon to the best piece of capital, even if they're not physically in the same location, to deliver care at scale across disparity of healthcare networks. This is huge for challenges in Japan with different terrains and stuff as well. Like you don't have your best surgeons are equally distributed across all regions. They're in Kyoto and Osaka and Tokyo. So telesurgery has huge appeal within Asian contexts and other global contexts as well. They also have this Skywalker. Not right now. It's not time for dinner. It's like 3:48. Um, but they have this Skywalker orthopedic robot, which I don't know how they were able to get a trademark out from under Lucas Arts. That's fantastic. I laughed so hard when I saw that. It's a great name. They have the Mona Lisa for I think this is percutaneous prostate puncturing, which is pretty cool. And I don't know what else the system is, but Medbot's a monster of a company. Really cool. And if you're curious more about Medbot as well as Metacroid and these systems, Steve Bell has a YouTube channel, How to Start Up in MedTech. He did an interview with the CEO of Medbot and kind of toured their entire facility, did a walkthrough of the robot. He did something similar for Hinatoli as well. He did a deep dive video, which is fantastic. So check those both out as well. How to Start Up in MedTech. Just search to my, I think it's like his most recent videos, honestly. All right, let's jump back into the edit.
Many of them.
Well, and I made a promise to you. That's for you. When I started in Ethicon, I worked first in our handheld business and ultrasonic technology. I already hit that one, so we're good. Did our ultrasonic walkthrough. Let's get rolling now. His last name, Hunnekens?
Hunnekens, Scott Hunnekens.
Hunnekens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very humbling to cross paths. That's just a good follow on LinkedIn that I'll share really quick. If you want to see like where VC funds and like where the market's moving, besides Steve Bell, Scott Hennekens was the CEO of Verb Surgical when I worked there. Scott Hennekens. There's an E in it. Um, I would highly suggest giving him a follow. Like if you look at everything he's touched across surgery, it's pretty compelling. But this was kind of the big one that we talked through. He was also part of shoot. Oh, I didn't know he's involved with Proximy. That's awesome. Okay. Anyway, he's a good follow, a great leading voice. He's been on some great podcasts with Omar Khatib as well. And really coined for like saying digital surgery 4.0, which is kind of the next version of surgery where we have like Google guidance kind of ideas of how do you bring everyone up the learning curve so that they can adequately navigate the surgical theater with the same outcomes regardless of their input skill set. That's what we're going after with Verb Surgical initially. All right, back to the edit. By the way, it's been a couple days since I put these markers down. I'm improvising through it, so sometimes I might blaze past one if I can't remember why I thought it was important to share.
Direct. And we were very lucky that we hit almost like an investment bubble when you could take 600 million of investment in a round, and you could
Yeah.
get the soft banks, and you could get the alley bridges, and you could get some of the big investors to put money into you, because everyone was still had hopes and dreams in those days.
So why this is so important? Oh shoot, there we go. That's the right screen. Sorry. Why this is so important? It is incredibly difficult to commercialize a surgical robotics system. I think we get to it a little bit later. It takes like $1 billion just to commercialize the robot. That doesn't include making the robot. So he was explaining they found an investment bubble where venture capitalists, private equity were really interested in finding new opportunities and investing heavily and taking risks. In a post-COVID world, the market shifted. Markets always shift and change, and it's more challenging to get the capital. So a raise like that would be less likely to have occurred. So having a unicorn kind of company like CMR Surgical is a matter of like the right idea, the right unmet need, the right technical feasibility, the right commercially viable path, but also the right funding landscape, getting the right talent. There's a lot of rights that have to happen in order for a company in medtech to scale and be successful, which is why it was such a privilege to chat with Steve in these spaces.
The money is going a lot into things like, you know, and I talk about this on my course. You spend a lot of money setting up companies,
Yes.
setting up
In all the different
H-
countries and
HR
then to be able to
departments,
legally sell. Yeah.
yeah,
So the reason you end up setting up a lot of companies is you can't just take a medical device that you made in America and like ship it via Amazon or Alibaba to another country and just have it go out. You typically have to have corporate offices and corporations set up in other countries that then pass through the revenue to the US. So this is actually one of the biggest challenges I had directing front end innovation in Japan was technically so complicated, okay? The Japanese commercial organization is from a legality perspective in Japan, a commercial organization. It is not an R&D organization. So R&D has to be, the headcount has to sit under the US entities because R&D is taxed differently than commercial. It increases the taxing of the entire company if I'm doing R&D activities under this Japan commercial. So because I was in a bridge role and it was leadership, my headcount was still a dotted line to the US because of different international tax liabilities. You have to ask mom.
She wasn't. She couldn't open it.
Oh, okay. I can open some salsa for
Uncle Bob
you. Oh
couldn't
my
open it.
gosh.
Yeah, Uncle Bob couldn't open it.
What's your ASMR salsa? There we go.
Oh my
Woo!
goodness.
Salsa. Comment below your favorite salsa. All right, let's keep rolling. Oh, that's so fun. Love my boy.
yeah, yeah, and that's not a wise use of your money, you know, as a growing company in that kind of difficult of technology.
So, what he's talking about is when you're trying to commercialize into multiple countries, it's not really the best use of your funds to be trying to set up all these legal entities in all these other countries. Your best use of your money is to actually progress and modify the tech and keep iterating on it. So it's getting better as you're taking learnings from the commercialization in real time so that you can eventually start to crush the market. So that's why we get towards the build to buy model being so valuable because you can just focus on developing the tech, knowing the money's there. And then when it's ready to be acquired and deployed, then you hand that to a larger strategic like a Johnson& Johnson, a Stryker, an Olympus, who can then scale it because they already have the existing corporate offices. This is part of the kind of like the inertia. Shoot, like the barrier to entry in medical is so high because all of these large strategics have so much global commercial power that it's just easier for them to take something, lift it, and sell it versus building it from the ground up, which is where startups have the edge, which is kind of fun. All cool things.
Okay. You deliver that baby and hand it over to the world experts on commercialization.
Okay, he said what I just said because I learned from what he said. So that one's wrapped up.
Teams and you think the interface is going to work. I don't think it does. I think the friction becomes high and then politics creep in. Who is this? Is it the dog or the tail? Who's wagging who? Is the robot the dog or is the mothership the dog? Well, the instrument just tags onto the robot, so surely that's the tail, right? Well, no, because the mothership owns the dog, so
Yeah.
therefore we are the dog.
Okay. He moved through this very quickly. There's so much wisdom in these like three sentences he went through that capture years of delays of the Johnson Otava platform because of this dog. So I'm going to draw it because I think it'll be fun to draw it for all my visual big brains out there. So let's just scroll up for a minute. So I'm gonna do my best Pictionary dog here. Yeah, we're off to a very strong start. This is a dog dinosaur, okay? So what he's talking about is you have the dog. We'll call it the dino dog. You have the tail. And the dog wags the tail. The tail is complicit. It's passive. It is controlled by the dog. You would think that the verb robot is the dog because technically everything has to be compatible with the robot. The robot end to end is what delivers the clinical value to the patient. But the robot, there's a power dynamic. Okay, so we're going to do two things. So from a tech perspective, the tail is Ethicon instrument. This is where I spent years of my life, years of my passion and tears living right right there, right at the interface. That was my world. And then eventually you pull Oris into this as well. But from a finance perspective, J&J's holding the bag. They got the money. So does that mean verb is the dog? What we ran into in so many moments is you had subsystem owners of these instruments trying to tell verb what they should be doing, what their interface should look like based on the needs of the instrument, which is kind of important because we do know how to make best in class surgical stapling and energy devices and other devices, but we don't know how to make them robotically. And end to end, instrument plus robot is a complete system that touches the clinical environment. So, really, these system requirements should be dictated from the Verb or Oris platform back to the instruments. Tell the instruments what interface they are working with, and then make them redesign their instruments based on the interface. Now, here's the challenge when you have speed to market challenges, you have all these existing assets. I'm going to be very careful with my words and how I approach this. We're going to do a thought experiment so that I don't reveal too much. Say that you have spent decades perfecting a given technology. We'll say it's a wristed grasper that can shoot laser beams out the front of it. We'll totally generalize it. It's not what we have. So you've been doing that for 2 decades and you know all the mechanisms from the laser tip through some kind of cabling that controls the laser, and then it fits in your hand. It's like a normal trigger grip. If you wanted to make a robot and that had a laser grasper on it, again, that's not what's happening. Could be happening. I don't know. Been away from Otava long enough. It would be in your best interest as the instrument maker to change as little as possible along this continuum. Keep all the components the same, all the way down to that last little interface. And if you're super selfish, you might tell the interface, I actually need a bigger motor here. I need you to like give me more power within a given envelope so that I don't have to get different mechanical advantage. Or I want you to create software to give me a backlash compensator because I need this backlash in my gears to make sure the system doesn't bind up. I don't want to redesign that. That's going to add time and cost. So the problem where we burned a lot of years, time, and money was Ethicon functioned like it was the dog, when in reality it should have been an instrument that was compatible and dictated to by the system. And this is, we tried to get everything down to the interface across requirements, testing this interface as much as possible with as many iterations as possible. And the split of the large strategic and the startup culture was at the interface. And because of this dino dog phenomenon, this is like where all the pain, this is supposed to be pain, I'm not a comic, came from the confusion. Nobody had the authority to tell anybody what to do for years because of different legality, contracts, different siloing of the organizations. And my job was to come right in the middle of that and be a good partner. And I learned a lot in the middle of this world. Okay. So anyway, that's why Otava's delayed, in my opinion. But it's an insider perspective. But Steve nailed it in like 2.5 sentences. Let's keep rolling.
But if it doesn't work for you, you're not forced down it. You're laughing, so obviously that
So,
feels.
no, there's a story. I'm sorry. We when we started, we had different requirement management systems. We had different CAD systems, and we had different units, and everything we had to have multiple units on Cascade. It was just like a nightmare. Even within Ethicon, we would have different CAD softwares or units depending on whether you were in energy or stapling. Okay, so this is just a fun story. Someday I want to write this book. I haven't pulled it all together yet because I've been busy on other verticals in my business, but it's going to be called The Wonders and Horrors of Engineering Disasters. Oh my gosh, I should work on this right now. I want to stop everything that I thought was important and do this book now that I've been reminded of it. But what I want it to be is like set up as like a little comic with like a picture and then a little pretentious engineer cartoon of myself with a little whiteboard pointing to it. And then it would talk through like the disaster and then be like some snarky backhand calculation of why this shouldn't happen. So like one of my favorite examples, and we're gonna get to this one right here, is there was this, you could Google it, this great molasses flood. So during the start of Prohibition, I know we have a global audience. In a US context, I believe before World War II, America decided for some reason alcohol is now illegal. I don't even remember why, but enough people said, yeah, alcohol bad, no alcohol at all. It became illegal, which immediately drove the price up like crazy. Mob got involved. People started bootlegging alcohol, selling it. There's, crime and shootouts between the police and mobsters and things on it. But as one of the repercussions of this, molasses was a key ingredient in alcohol. I guess you could ferment it as a sweetener. I don't know much of this. They built a giant dam to hold molasses, huge dam to just store it up to get ready to moonshine. And I think the dam broke because they didn't calculate the hydrostatic force. So if you have like a fluid here behind a wall, based on the geometry of the wall, this is supposed to be three-dimensional, terrible cube of water. Based on how many layers of water you have, it's like pushing a force in or out of plane, like it's pushing on the glass or it's pushing on the fish tank. And you can calculate using derivatives like how much force is occurring at each layer. The most force happens at the bottom of the glass right here, I believe. Yeah, because you got the weight and the pressure. Yeah. Anyway, they didn't calculate the hydrostatic force of this dam. It ruptured a 17-foot wall of molasses, rolled down a hill. You could fact check me. Maybe it was 12 feet. I thought it was 17 from at least my professor in college. And it like killed people. Like people died. Can you imagine dying running from a slow moving wall of molasses? Okay. Anyway, this is a nerd aside. I'm sorry. What I wanted to get to, and I got lost in my book, is there's another failure I want to include in this where Lockheed Martin and I think NASA were trying to work on like a Mars orbiter that would orbit around Mars, invest, tens of millions, if not more. I don't know how much in the project. And they launched this thing after years of co-development. They got all their requirements, all their testing, they've done all the math. They launch it and it just goes into orbit and then it enters the atmosphere and burns up and poof because there was a unit conversion error between someone using metric and someone using US units. At Johnson and Johnson, when we were working on all these robots, we all had different units from the start. So every requirement had it in inch pounds, and then others had it in newtons. And it was just absolutely terrible to manage it across units because we were worried about the same kind of integration failure. Integration co-developments are very, very challenging, but people do these things successfully. We learned because we weren't very good at it. And this is before we had built up systems engineering capabilities when I then joined the team. So I learned systems engineering in a very messy place to learn it, which is fantastic. Let's jump to the next one. Hopefully, this is interesting, friends. And I just checked, I got a red dot, which means that I have not yet lost power on this recording. So we're still live.
If I look back on my time of how much or what proportion of teams' time is spent doing that dog and pony show around the
Yeah.
world, 300 meetings to raise your money, it's completely ineffective. And I think what you get with the build to buy is you free them from that. You free the team from that. And that's why I think they can go faster and they can be more focused. And it stops them making suboptimal decisions.
Okay. So this is kind of Steve hitting the punchline on the build to buy is when you have the cash set up ahead of time with pre-aligned milestones ultimately leading towards an acquisition, a disproportionate amount of medtech's founders time is going towards these dog and pony shows, which means you're demoing your technology to keep stakeholders engaged, and eventually doing pitches to raise capital. And you do a successful series A, series B, series C. Like each series just leads to the next series. Like your job becomes get money, keep people aligned with the vision, and then have your COO, your chief operating officer, and your CTO like get it done technically so that you can go out and get more money. Very complicated and challenging space. What Steve's talking about is with a build to buy, you kind of shaking hands the right way at the front end to just get the money set up so that you can actually drill down into the details and really make sure you're developing like the best product possible, which is pretty cool.
All pulling in the same direction. It allows you to do things like be a little bit more down in the weeds where you shouldn't be normally as a CEO because you've not got time to do it. But if you are the CEO, being down on the ground floor has many advantages, understanding the business at the fundamentals that
What I said that he had just said.
would go out there. I would have three R&D teams. I would have the ones that are outsourced as the build to buys. I would have the internal incremental teams that are trying to eke 5 cents out of a catheter and trying to make design for manufacture better and trying to make the product better and make a stapler slightly longer. And so
Life
you don't get
cycle
rid
as
of R&D.
well.
Yeah,
And
life cycle, product life cycle, exactly. But keep them really focused on that, not trying to be all things to all people. But I would also have the third team in there, which is the team called the destructor team. And it would be a small group of people whose sole job is to destroy your business.
okay, this is a really good insight. Also, I realized because I moved quickly, I don't know if I showed you this beautiful dam with all these different layers and the forest supplied. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But then this is my book. The Wonders, Wars of Engineering Disasters. It's gonna be great. I haven't written it at all. I have another book in front of it that I want to work on. I have too many books I want to write. Okay, so I want to just show these three teams and talk through why this is a great idea and why this is a hard idea to implement. I have some challenges with it. I think the intent of it's fantastic. I think for larger strategics, it's hard. So he's saying for a larger, and when we say strategic, this is a major company that has, hundreds of millions of billions of revenue, commercializing products that have already existed, like typically longer aged company that would be acquiring other companies as opposed to an acquiree like a startup. So we'd say larger strategics. So he says your R&D should have three teams. The first is iterative, in-house. So this would be all the engineers that you're attracting at your college career fairs to come in, look at the products you have, and just help them do stepwise change. All right, little by little, it gets better, and you make more money at each step, hypothetically. Now there's an S curve. We're not going to talk about that. The second team that he's discussing is you would have external, like build to buy. So you would take the the good people. I'll do a check mark here. You take like your most innovative people, drop them in the startup that you set up as a build to buy, and just let them go wild. Get all those people out of your company and into this little startup ecosystem so they could go hard and fast and actually make what needs to be made. The third team is you take the even extra most crazy innovative type, and their job is disruptors. He doesn't label this as front end. He's saying you need to look at your business exactly as it exists today and have a team that's focused on trying to disrupt and destroy your business. What would competitors be doing? What could other startups be doing? Basically, like, how do you go upstream? So if you make a device, a surgical stapler that cuts tumors out of the lungs, how would you go upstream in that clinical case? How would you detect earlier? How would you remove endoluminally, like through a natural orifice? How would you move outside the body, like histostonics, which I can show you histostonics as well. I have a video of that from, um, I went out to, one second. This is, oh, so this guy didn't say I could share his audio, but basically this can cook. Um, that's cavitation. So this whole system would basically, you'd have like a water bag on your stomach, and then this can create little tiny bubbles by pulsing like intense energy through your body without being in your body, right? That would disrupt your entire business. So Steve's advocating, oh, shoot. Steve, I moved too fast. Steve's advocating for a technology that does something like this. Show it again. So if you look at the water is moving right there, but that could be inside your body, destroying cell material of tumors outside, which is pretty sick. So the problem, so let me go back to my whiteboard, my fancy view. The problem with this setup is going to be P&L. It always goes back to profit and loss. So if you give a director, let's be generous and give them like a $12 million budget, and they're tasked with, go find two 100 mil EMPV opportunities. Like, this basically means like take this $12 million investment and make sure that its net present value is around 100 million based on how quickly we can get to market with a new idea that could be transformative tech. When you have this and you look at these three pathways, what tends to happen is iterative innovation is faster in some capacity. Like, you can get the money back faster. So you typically get stuck here. Stuck. Most of this money gets stuck there. Thanks, Kari. That's very encouraging. Kari likes this conversation. Some of this money through business dev dev ends up going to external innovation through like the J Labs ecosystem is like, or JJDC. There's lots of different ways that J&J takes money out of its ecosystem and like lets people progress new technology. Sometimes these funds aren't directly coming out of R&D, but they do sometimes come from different opcos or they go up to a J&J level. Every company approaches it differently. But this schism happens, and then there's not a lot left for this space. Typically, what happens is this gets brought back in house, and it's called front end. And you have a couple people that are allowed to pursue new stuff. Some of them think with this disruptive mindset, but then when they say, hey, we have a great idea, if we could just do this, it would diagnose lung cancer this much faster. We'd be able to intervene with it sooner, never even need those staplers. Immediately, that solution's cannibalizing your existing portfolio. So it's difficult because of the EMPV based on like you also have like could throw in a calc for cannibalization. I don't know how to calculate that cannibalization. So if you're taking out your existing product, but you can't get more per procedure because of it, it's difficult for this business to then prioritize that from an NPD new product development perspective holistically when they could just keep iterating on what they got and keep making more and more money. So this is the cycle that Steve wants to break, and it's just an inherent issue with strategics that it takes different leaders with the boldness to say, no, it's called ring looping. We're going to ring loop some of these ventures with this money to go out and do crazy. My initiative in Japan from J&J was ring looped. So I had money set aside to go out in Japan, do epic stuff, blue sky, freedom to fail. Businesses have to take those shots. They're very strategic with where and how they do them, but a lot of times these fail if it's not set up the right way. All right, let's jump back into the pod. I think this is just a good thumbnail.
Buy to build to buy, which will be there's a company out there, something like, I don't know, let's say XCath, right? And
Okay.
they're really making progress. And G is
Okay, let's say XCath. I didn't know what XCath was. I assumed it was a catheter robot. So let's just look up how to start up medtech XCath. Let's see if that brings up a blog or anything. I did not get as lucky as I wanted to. XCath. So NVIDIA Isaac to build next generation interventional robotics. Excuse me. So it's a telerobotic system enhancing endovascular care for stroke conditions. Oh, cool. Right, so it's an intervention, and NVIDIA is doing something fun. So what he's talking about with this build to buy to build to buy, and I think Cordis is an example of this as well. I'm going to make something up that has like a 47% probability of being correct. So just test all of it. I believe J&J divested Cordis. Let me double check. Okay, so Johnson Johnson divested Cordis to Cardinal Health. They got some cash for it. Cordis was a company that did something. I don't remember. The reason I share this is because then this other guy came in and used Cordis to do this crazy scaling of medtech innovation. Like he treated it like a startup. I forgot who he was. There's an LSI talk on it. You got me fishing. LSI Cordis talk. Ah, this might be it. The middle path innovation. Yeah, this is definitely look this up. This guy Duke from Ajax Health. That was it. Ajax Health is like a private equity, I believe, but they started using Cordis as like a shell to start pumping out innovation like crazy at the right like cost point and stuff. Um, So I would definitely encourage you to check this out. Great talk. But this is similar to like the buy to build the buy, where a company like Cardinal Health buys a company or startup, but then they say, I know you can build that. We actually want you to build this stuff. Here's some money, get it done. And it's outside of their world and their ecosystem. It still hits their balance sheet, which is a little complicated though. If it's a fully acquired company, it's different. It's more of a true acquisition on paper, but the intent can be more of the build to buy framework, which Steve was getting at. All right, let's see what these are.
Really, really interesting. I think some of the structural heart cardiovascular. So if you look at Capstone Medical,
So let's go look at Capstone Medical because I don't know what that is. This is just as much for me as for you because Steve moves really quick. Capstone Medical. Hmm. Unless it's private equity. Okay, so this look like, oh, Capstone with a K. All right, striking out here. We don't know what Capstone is. Let's keep moving on.
very interesting areas. Robotic ablation systems, where you're going to have visualized ablation, where you can actually see the ablation
Oh,
done.
interesting.
Yeah, there's
And ablation, a good example of this. Let's go back to our tablet. I'm gonna draw something I don't fully understand. So let's start with that. I I will be the first to tell you what I know and what I don't know and what I'm coming into knowing of. So even though I'm a pretentious engineer, I that's just a character I play on TV. Like I'm actually a very reasonable person. So for ablation, let's say you have a this is your liver, terrible drawing of a liver, and you have a tumor right there. They could come in. This is typically called percutaneous. So rather than coming in through a trocar that insufflates the body cavity, they just stab a hole through your sidewall. And typically, some kind of visualization is occurring, say under ultrasound. Um, I'm not 100% sure the standard of care here. I think it's ultrasound. So that they can see what's going on. And they're going to come out with this needle right to the center here. And then this needle can emit localized microwaves in a pattern, like a oval, for instance, and it'll basically cook all of the tissue here, and you'll have some thermal necrosis. So eventually, we can have robotic applications of localized ablation, where if this probe was, for instance, bendy, you can enter endoluminally through the lungs through different robotic applications, or through traditional trocars if you need to do a straight one. So imagine doing that, integrating with guidance and being able to see everything that's going on. This is very similar. Um, like one player in this space would be Monarch. Let me see if I can pull up a video of Monarch really quick. This is we are wild in here. We are hitting everything, including opening salsa. Monarch robot. All right, let me find a video really quick. Oh shoot, I muted myself. I don't remember where I started. So crap. Let's go back in time for a minute. I probably muted myself during that last video. All right, so let's fix this really quick. So if we go over here, what I was talking about, we'll do it again, is if you wanted to access this liver tumor right here, you can go in percutaneously with a stick and create a series of microwaves under ultrasonic visualization to then emit microwaves of energy. Eventually, you could look at putting this on different robotic platforms to access different parts of the body. Then I started talking about Monarch, which is an endoluminal robotics platform right here, which is fantastic because you can have a needle to stab things, which is fantastic. And you could also have really great guidance where you could sew different images to figure out where you're at, where you're moving. Monarch leverages CT scans. All right, let's pop back over here, see the next one.
it's not just going to be endoluminal surgery, so not like too much like EndoQuest, where you're going to have ESDs and things like that. But you're going to have things where you're going to have robots deliver therapies, things like endogenics or
I don't know what any of those things are. But we're gonna keep rolling. So you can look up EndoQuest and Endogenics. Those are research projects for me too.
People will go earlier down the pipe. If they've got brains, they'll go earlier in the pipe. First of all, you get it at a lower multiple. That's
Yeah, he's talking about acquisitions. Typically, you can get an acquisition at a better rate if you take more risk that it might fail and acquire it, say, before FDA submission. Now, Johnson & Johnson, which is risk adverse, functions more like a large private equity firm. They will often wait until an asset clears FDA submission, not always, and then they will acquire it because they are then ready to immediately commercialize it, and they'll just crank up commercialization. This approach happens with other super acquisitions as well. I'm not going to spell cherry blossom for you right now because that's too complicated, but Cherry for cherry.
the value that you get per dollar. It just makes sense. If you want your R&D budget to go somewhere, put it into a startup, fuel the hell out of them. And again, it's like what I say on my course. There are big company mentalities, and there are people who are brilliant for big companies, and there are startups and startup mentalities.
What, love? Cherry. We're spelling cherry blossom. So what he's explaining it is if you put more money into this area, you get higher leverage. Let's say this is 3 to 1 or 10 to 1 return on investment versus here it's like 1 to 1 if you're just in the iterative world. So R&D spend, he argues, should always be going external. But at the same time, it kind of goes against the motivations of this front end director, for instance, who wants to show that it was made here and have sexy engineering. They're going to be pumping money towards their disruptive front end group, which is complicated.
Tax on the business, but it's horses for courses, and you got to have the
Okay. He says this twice. I don't know if horses for courses is a UK thing. Actually, I think he's from Ireland, if I recall, or if it's a Steve Bell thing. So I just wanted to look this up because I had never heard this expression before in my life. Anyways, horses for courses. Horses for courses. It's British English. Different people are suited to different things or situations. I'm a great believer in horses for courses. What in the world? Okay, I'm just gonna believe it. It's so foreign to me. That's so wonderful. All right.
product. They will build to that specifications. But what you have to do is go to every product and look what the manufacturer asked it to be. Feel it in your own hands, feel the product, and then make a judgment call on it. Is it good or bad or indifferent? And I think that I would encourage on the robotics side that everybody try firsthand the robots.
So this was a beautiful point he made because we're discussing perceptions of quality across different robotic systems in different global markets. And he was really stressing the importance of like you have to touch it and play around with it to break through any biases or perceptions you may have about one system versus another. For instance, I've played around with Intuitive plenty of times. I've seen lots of cases of it. I've played with Otava a lot because I worked on it for quite some time. I love the system. I want to believe in the system. We'll see how commercialization goes. But, and playing with CMR broke certain things in my brain of just like what I had known about robotic surgery to be true. And it really opened my perspectives of like, oh, this would be a really good fit for these specific healthcare situations, these specific clinicians looking for this certain thing. Like, I immediately understood the segment on why CMR makes sense. But I didn't know that until I touched it and played with it. And that's what he's encouraging you to do with any product is to explore and kind of break free of that.
Behind it, and a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people.
Well, and your video was, eye-opening for me just about Shanghai. Like I had never considered Shanghai for future opportunities. I would consider a boomerang back to Japan. So it's just like I watched that and talked with my wife. And I was like, do we ever want to go to Shanghai? Because there's cool stuff happening there. So this is one of the perks of just being a global leader is when you take a jump towards one context and have that experience as a family, and we've boomeranged back to the US for a season, you start to have an openness to either return to what worked for you or like what's the next adventure. Like I actually just reached out to that Chinese surgical robotics company CEO because we crossed paths through a job posting, and I was like, I'm open to looking at commercial strategy in the Middle East. Like Dubai would be cool. That never would have been something I thought about before living in Japan and proving to myself that our family can navigate expat life in another country. So it's really interesting to see a video he curated showing Medbot and their facilities and what they're building towards and their scale. Like it alleviated a lot of my concerns of working in a different global context for a different company, which is really cool. Yeah, let's keep rolling. You're either first or last kind of thing. What's that? It's just a thumbnail. My question though, when I look at vehicle choices, I have, you know, Honda, Toyota, Dodge. There's just so many different minivans I could choose for my kids. And I have an affinity towards the Honda Odyssey because I think it's the superior minivan experience for carting all my kids around. But the reality is, like, all these companies run really tight margins. They still do the best they can to put as much feature into different levels of that automobile as possible. And there's room in the market for more than one minivan manufacturer. So, what I'm getting at with this, because I wanted to kind of double back over this example, it is, we could say the market's saturated in vehicles. There, if I want a minivan, I have an absurd amount of choices. And I, at one point, I was thinking, I was like, why do all these minivans exist? Like, who's going to pick this one versus this one versus this one? Like, they're all so close, and you have brand affinity drives your pricing power and your leanings towards things. Like, I ride Hondas because I trust in their reliability. I've always had Hondas or Toyotas. Why would you get like a not Honda Odyssey? It doesn't make sense to me. But the reality is, for someone else, like the Toyota Sienna is the real deal. And what I wanted to get towards with this is there's actually room to segment the robotic market based on different surgeon preferences, the clinical workflows they're navigating, the size of the hospital, the budget, the kinds of instrumentation they prefer to use, especially if they're coming from handheld laparoscopy moving into robotics. There's such a wide array of like different technical capabilities that can meet the needs of segments of surgeons. You're not going to make a perfect system for 100% of the market. So when we see that these robots are, $1.2 million to buy and to build them, it's hundreds of millions to commercialize them, it's a billion. Those numbers are unfathomable to us as normal humans. But when you look at what the market demands and how large the market is across a global context, that's why there's room for innovation in these spaces, even though there are surgical robotics companies that will fail and have failed historically trying to compete with Intuitive. But some will slip through. We'll see where CMR lands. Go around them.
Yeah.
I think that'd be fun. Yeah. And hey, pretend. Okay, so he was just running through some of his favorite robots. So let's run that next.
How it enters their workflow, and they're not going to change from it. So
So one of the things he was sharing with Intuitive here that I thought was curious is you want to look at robots from an ecosystem perspective. It's the instruments, it's the robotic system, it's the digital experience of preoperative, intraoperative, and postoperative planning and surveillance. Whoever owns and builds the entire ecosystem will own that market for a long time. So people that grew up learning robotic surgery on Intuitive will have an brand affinity and loyalty to the clinical workflow of Intuitive, and they'll just upgrade to the DaVinci 5 versus looking at any of the robots in the market. I'm the same way with I'm a big fan of Milwaukee Power Tools. I'm on their battery packs. I don't have DeWalt. I don't have Ryobi. I don't have any of those other ones because I'm a Milwaukee guy regardless of what the next tool costs. If it's what I need for the job, it's Milwaukee. And you have, Apple and Samsung. The same kind of thing is happening in clinical spaces when you look at the data and the hardware and how it all comes together. That's why it's going to be so important in the future for people to have robotics offerings, handheld lab and open offerings, and generator, smart interconnected devices, analytics from preoperative all the way to postoperative. You have to bring all the pieces together, advanced visualization, as well as insufflation. You need the whole stack to eventually get these larger contracts and to keep your market essentially. That's where the bigger players will start to crush over time.
then if I go to someone like Hinatori, I think that that's going to be Japanese for Japanese.
Yep.
It's there's a cultural bias towards if I can have a Japanese product that works as well.
This is very true. That's all I have to say about that. Hinatoli will sell just because it's Japanese in Japan. I do think that it will reach other markets as well. Many, but not all, markets in Asia do often look toward within surgery, often look to Japanese clinicians as leading voices and KOLs in these spaces. So if there's a KOL that adopts Hinatoli and has a certain technique in a certain clinical space, it's likely that Hinatoli may be adopted in some of those other procedures outside of Japan as well. But it's likely going to be disproportionately Asia.
You get onto another robot and they get onto that. I think if you then come to Hugo, Hugo will be Medtronic loyalists. I think there'll be a lot of Medtronic loyalists who, they like the LigaSure. When Signia comes onto it, they like the Signia. They trust those brands. I think that they'll be loyalists onto the Medtronic system.
Let's look at Signia and uh, the other one, Ligashire. Ligashire has been crushing Ethicon. All right. So Ligashire is a vessel sealer. This is showing the evolution of it. Basically, you put tissue in here, it'll run electricity through the tissue, top and bottom pad, and then a mechanical knife will run down this slot and you can transect. It's also really good with like non-sticking, so they have a nano coating technology, which is why this has become like one of the most like the gold standard of RF sealing compared to Ethicon's Echelon or Ethicon's End Seal, which struggles against it from just a market share perspective. And then you also have Signia. What wasn't mentioned, we'll do Signia first really quick. This is their stapler offering. So you could imagine this will eventually make its way to robotics as well, little by little. Oh, why is it like that? I can move it around, fun. So you have your staple cartridge right there, top anvil, you close the tissue and it runs staple lines. Eventually this will be in a robotics application, which would be like Da Vinci Endowist. Is that not what it's called? Endoristic. Oh, beautiful. Oh, this is an old video. Here comes an animation. So the close, it's wristed. It's gonna drive these staples through the tissue. Yeah, show. Ethicon also has views like this. So sled pushes the staples through. Nice B. So J&J is just launching 3D staple lines where those B's cross over to kind of like wrap and hug the tissue more, so you get better perfusion, better blood flow, but still good compression. So this is a little bit different. All the wonderful competitors in these spaces is so cool. Yeah, let's keep rolling. Lots of
And
challenges.
so you've got that. They're all going to need other staplers and stuff. You're going to have the J&J Ottava, which is going to be J&J loyalists who, they love the J&J products. They love the staplers. They're big into and they'll be loyalists towards J&J.
So this loyalty, this brand affinity is so important because it does drive a reason to believe. If you've always leveraged an Ethicon harmonic blade in your hand, you're going to have some level of confidence that whatever comes next in energy on the Otava platform will fit in your hand and deliver clinical value that's just as valuable, if not more valuable, than what you had prior. So if you're on the edge towards bringing a new robot into your hospital, you're probably going to have a J&J leaning and maybe hold out for Otava. Although surgeons have been waiting for quite some time.
They'll find a cohort of people. And there'll be also that group who are trying to get into the J&J polyphonic architecture. And if they
Okay, so Johnson & Johnson has this polyphonic architecture. Let me pull that up really quick. So think about this as like Johnson & Johnson's Apple Store. So they're creating a digital ecosystem for more connected surgical devices and technologies. Um, let's see if it doesn't show anything fun, does it? But basically, they're like creating, anyone could come in and make new technologies on their infrastructure with some kind of data. I would actually love to know what data is available from here and what you could play with and what solutions you could deliver. Because now that I'm an independent consultant, it would be really interesting to play in their world. That's polyphonic. There's more available online about that.
So I think you'll get some there. Then you're going to have the telesurgery fans that are really going to go after the 2 my.
Yep, the Timai is the MedBot company. So folks that are trying to teleport into surgery across global boundaries, that's where that platform has an edge.
Chinese robots. Then you've got India, SSI. They're going to dominate in India, made for India, in India, by Indians, for India. Big nationalistic push there. Modi has been a big push on that. Intuitive is still number one there, but I think SSI is already number two now with over 100 robots in there.
I didn't know anything about that company before he was sharing this. So anytime you have the opportunity to do a podcast with someone like Steve, you're going to glean something, which is fantastic and just really awesome to get to bring you into proximity with some of these ideas.
For that.
And you would
It,
just do stapling on a side port, right? Like they don't have a
for,
stapling
to, for
offering.
today, for
Yeah, yeah,
today, but
apparently.
there's no doubts that that system can have the capability to have a stapler should they ever get round to it.
Okay, so I have some thoughts on this. So we were talking about stapling on CMR. I'm going to draw something. So, because I got to see one special view. So this is CMR. Okay. CMR, and I didn't have enough time to play with it, has like these three metal protrusions, and they looks like they can translate this way. And this appears to be how mechanical motions and tensions put on these cables inside the body to get these arms to open up and spin around. I am skeptical of them being able to put a stapler just based on only having three inputs that I saw. Maybe I missed something because I didn't have too long with the system. I had what I thought was enough, but they only have three inputs, and I'm not sure like how was it torque range, like what they could do from a torque range for short term and long term. Also, you can operate like at higher RPMs for a lower amount of time, or low RPMs for a higher amount of time before you like start to overheat the motors. So like optimizing this is curious, but yes, this is a really interesting trend. So for stapling, like he's like, I'm sure that they could put stapling on the system. I don't see how they do it unless they had another. Da Vinci did this in one of its earlier robots. You would get like the stapler. So this is now a stapler, but then it would come with an extra battery pack thing that's powered, just like a powered stapler would be, like an extra interface on here that would elevate it or something and provide additional input or power to do more inside the tool, because you just have to drive really high load to deform all those staples and cut through the tissue, and doing that while articulated is incredibly challenging to design too. So definitely curious what the future looks like with that. If they use Big Brain 30 as a promo code, they can get 30% off, which I would highly suggest. It's been life changing for me, just navigating it and figuring out how I could apply these learnings into whatever medtech startups I'm part of in the future. Um, okay, so if you're interested in Siebel's class, he's got a free, not a free, but he's got a fantastic course. I did a video testimonial you can check out on how to start up in medtech. I'm right there. But it's been so helpful for me as I've done medtech consulting, and it's just filled a lot of like pain points and gaps I had and why things happen the way they do. But if you go to online courses, go to about, you can hop right into how to build a startup in medtech, which is right here. I don't know why that became so bizarre. But the cool thing about this is once you view or join the course, you get to hang out with Steve for 100 modules, which is super helpful. And I gleaned a ton out of it, so I'm sure you will as well. Let's keep rolling. Long click. All right. Do we have any more? That was it. We did it. Well, thank you so much for being part of Sunday Sips. If you want to hang out, I have a community called the Big Brain Club post a link below. There'll be more instructions on that. It's free. If you yourself or someone you know would be interested in being a guest on Sunday Sips, I'm super exclusive with it. I only do 1 or 2 episodes per month because these edits are a ton of work. But let me know. This is a paid service I offer for folks in medtech that are trying to increase or build their personal brand or bring people around the technologies they're developing. So I have a wait list for this that you can fill out to help me know what kind of story you're trying to curate, and I can let you know how I can help. But anyway, appreciate you, friends. Keep changing the world, and you can sip on that.